Good evening. We're now ready to start our board meeting. Secretary Sanders, please call the roll.
Mr. Heisel?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to break out in song. My country feels a beat. One day.
You haven't seen that yet.
At this time, we will have our public comment. I'd like to draw your attention to our screen, which has a few guidelines for public comment. They're also available on the public comment forms. Sandy Walters, Track Cost Transparency Partnership.
Hi, good evening. At
evening.
the last meeting, I did ask about the track cost, and I know someone is supposed to get back to me on that. I did not include my email address, so I did resubmit that for tonight. I'm hoping to hear back from someone soon as to if that money came from the grant that we received or how that was paid for. And I would also like to just make a comment about how the meetings are being run now as far as our participation in it. I know we always talk about transparency and partnership and, simple question as a taxpayer about the track and where the money came from. If it's is it coming from the grant? I guess I think I can get a quick response here verbally without it being an email. So that's my question about transparency, partnership, if that's how we want to run things or we don't want to run things. But just asking as a taxpayer where that money came from. No comment? Nobody wants to comment?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We will make sure you get that information. Next, Bill Sawashlish. Sorry. Fireworks at homecoming.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to shoot fireworks at homecoming. I think it worked out great. Somewhere in the middle of the third quarter, I thought you guys would never allow us permission to do that because we were losing, but we wound up winning. So I'm just here to say thank you, and hope we can continue working together.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Keep the fireworks going.
Okay, at this time, do we have any board updates? Okay, moving on to administrative updates. Mrs. Monica Spence. Oh, I am so sorry. Moving a little too fast here. We have our good news reports. Most of you that have attended our meetings are probably more familiar with our Around the District portion of our meetings. We have revamped it a little bit and now calling it Good News Report. Previously in Around the District, we highlighted good things that were going on in our schools. With the Good News Report, we will be highlighting good and great things going on in our entire district. So this evening, we will be hearing from the high school. Dr. Hardin will be presenting some good news from the high school.
Thank you. It feels awkward talking to the board. I'm going to turn this microphone so I can talk to everyone in the room to the best of my ability. I am, again, James Hardin. It is an honor and a pleasure to be the proud principal of Crete-Monce High School. You may have heard me say it before, and I mean it every time that I say it. We have some great news at the high school that I'm more than happy to share with the world. First, I'm going to go from three different perspectives: an academic perspective, student support services, and parental involvement. And I will be brief and to the point. With our academics, we are fortunate that we have already started our on-site college admission. Plainly, we have students that are walking into the counseling center, meeting with college admission reps, and walking out with admission letters. As a former college professor, I can say that is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. When the student gets their first letter, it builds their confidence, and they start seeking additional life opportunities. So it's great that that's happening in-house, and parents are not having to absorb the cost of having to go to the different universities to apply. We're doing a lot of that in-house now, and it's wonderful. Second, this summer, we started our Jumpstart to College program, in which we're finding students that have the potential to get to college, but maybe don't have all of the answers and all the avenues. And we are working with them from square one all the way to and through the admission process to make sure that they are getting in. There is an identification process and criteria, and we are going with that, and I'm just pleased at the results so far. We are already hanging stars on our wall for students that have been accepted into various colleges and or universities. Third would be our student support services team. We are beginning to address and build upon some things that have been done in the past. We have a committee of teachers, counselors, and deans answering one simple question: what do we do when a child needs help? The simple answer is we help them. How do we help them? There's lots of different ways, and we're in the process of, forgive the analogy, but I tell my staff all the time, we have to stop adopting puppies and start building kennels. And what I simply mean by that is, if I say, how do we help students, everyone may have an answer, but it's an individual answer. But what happens when you are not there that day, or if you move on in your career? Does that student go away? Well, we have to stop adopting puppies as much as building kennels, safe places for students to come and excel. And again, I'm not calling any student a puppy, but just go with the analogy, please. From a student support services perspective, and this is what a lot of people really want to know, happy to share, our out-of-school suspensions over the past 5 years has been plummeting. When we look at 2013, last year, versus 2014, year-to-date, we're down 10%. Referrals or referred incidents are down 28%. Students contributing to discipline issues or discipline referrals are down 25%. And if I can work a great positive in there, our homecoming dance was attended by 746 students. That's almost half of our student population with 0 incidents. We have some amazing, amazing kids in this building. I couldn't be more proud. But along with the kids, it takes me to my third point, and that's parental involvement. None of these things happen without the involvement of some great volunteers and some great parents. Some, of course, I see here tonight, and many more that couldn't make it tonight. But some of the things that happen and some of the things that our community does for our students in this building is simply amazing, simply life-changing. And we've been doing some things to increase that parental involvement. First, positive phone calls home. I have challenged my administrative team to do at least one a week. Some of us are doing more, but at least one day a week, identify a student that is doing the right thing, ask for his name, and call a parent or a guardian and say, you know what, your kid is awesome. You'd be surprised at how many parents never hear that. And you'd be amazed when those kids come in the building that next day, they walk with their chest poked out a little higher and their heads up, and you have built the inner wealth of that child. So we're trying to do that a little bit more. We have enough administrators, we can make a lot of phone calls, and we're going to continue to do that to build the wealth, the inner wealth of every child. It doesn't mean that they have to be an A+ honor roll, honors society student. It can be any student that's just doing the right thing. Phone calls home, loving on children, that goes a lot further than lollipops. The next, you may have seen already on the district website, or there's paper flyers out front, our parent university. The first session is tomorrow evening. We've invited parents from this building and any other building and in the community to come out and learn how to increase their child's life opportunities. We have an entire, I don't want to say curriculum, but we have an entire schedule planned out all the way through January 7, And once we go through that much and we hear the needs and the desires of our parents, we will indeed shape the last 3 or 4 meetings, that February, March, April, May. We will shape those parent university meetings to fit the needs and the desires of our learning community. Last, under parental involvement, in my last point of the evening, I have to say that I have to be one of the most blessed principals in the world. And here's why I say that. I have an amazing administrative team that's very supportive and works hard. I have some amazing teachers in this building. I have amazing administrative assistants and janitorial staff, and just all the people that work here are just so amazing. More important, I have amazing students in this building, and that makes me very fortunate. But that doesn't happen without help. So on this evening, I have a letter here, and it's not a letter like you would think. It's a letter. A varsity letter is one of the highest honors we can bestow upon a student in this building. But I'm going to give this letter and this pen to an amazing community member. Ms. Janine Galbraith, I thank you in front of the Board of Education, in front of my peers and my colleagues. And what do I thank you for? I'm going to tell everyone. Come here. I promised her I wouldn't make a big deal. I lied. She's a big deal to me. Let me tell you how we met. A couple of weeks ago, hold on. A couple of weeks ago, I received, you heard what she whispered to me. A couple of weeks ago, I received a phone call and an email from a concerned citizen parent community member telling me that there's been a lot of rumors about the school. And she was just curious to know what's going on. Are these rumors true or false? I said, you know what? I'm up for the Pepsi Challenge. Stop by the building. Let's walk the hallways together. I speak for her, and I say she was pleasantly surprised with what she saw in this building. She saw students in classes. She saw clear hallways. She saw a respectful student body. She saw teachers teaching. And I said, you know what? That's the norm. That's what we do in this building. That's an expectation, and it happens all of the time. She says, oh my God, what can I do to change the perception? I said, just be here, be a part. She asked about the football game. I invited her to come in and sit on a committee with some administrators and to talk about just the rumors. She says, I want to be a part and I want to help. If you walk through the front gate of the football game, there's no way you missed Miss Janine Galbraith. She was there helping, moving people along, and just, she earned her varsity letter. I am so pleased and proud. Again, I am the most fortunate principal in the world right now because she's on my team as well. So one more time, if you don't mind, make a big deal for this awesome community member receiving her varsity letter from Crete-Monce High School. I can hold my stomach in. Thank you very much for your time. That's the good news for the high school for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harden. Any board members have any comments?
Yeah, it's good to hear. It's off to a great start. You know, now you need another state championship, and it'll be a perfect year. No, it's really good to hear, and I love the early college stuff. It's the goal of the administration and several of us that have worked with the community colleges that by the time our young people graduate from high school, they can have an associate's degree just as well. And we're well on the way to doing that. Thank you.
Again, words really cannot describe how I feel about what was just presented. So keep up the good work. I know there's always bad things out there, and but to hear the good things, it just means a lot, and it does me well to my heart. So thank you.
I ditto the consensus of my colleagues and concur that the efforts of parental volunteer, Ms. Galbraith, I'm thinking about you, told Mr. Brown you had visited us a couple of weeks ago in the an early morning, what was it, personnel? Was it personnel meeting you came to? So it's good to see people coming back when you have expressed an interest in what's going on, and you're not necessarily just saying, I heard what somebody else said, but you can come back and actually be a part of solving problems, building bridges. That's more of a really good story and really good news. With relationship to all the great things that continue to happen, and I say continue to happen at the high school, in addition to much of the community partnerships, we have to just continue to build on those things, and I'm very proud and impressed that we are. I visited the high school over the last several weeks, and it is a good place. It always has been. The students have always been phenomenal. I can definitely say that. And I just want you guys to know that we are in complete support of what you're doing. Hope that the good news continues, and that we all have a task in ensuring that the good news gets to the right ears, to the right eyes. That's all of our job. Not even those who are not necessarily operating or working at the high school. It's the job of this community to ensure that the message that is known of Crete-Monce is the message that you speak. So we thank you for your efforts, and Ms. Galbraith, as a community member and a partner myself, I commend you for your excellent service to this district. Thank you.
I'll briefly say, Dr. Harden, I know you came in hitting the ground running, and I think it's great that you're not only bringing in new ideas and new initiatives, but also building upon some of the things that were already working in the high school. I'd like to say also that, you know, we have great schools in our district, and you're right, we have awesome students that are passionate about their school, and I'm sure you sense that in that building. I also want to say to our parent that we're honoring that. I too am grateful that you decided to be a part of the solution. Anybody that knows me knows that I push for parental involvement. I'm a strong advocate for parental involvement, and mostly parental involvement that's saying, let's collaborate together, let's work together to get the good things done. So I appreciate you for that, as well as all of our parents that are playing that role in our schools. And it's funny, when you held up the varsity letter, and as you're holding it up, you know, it's a CM, and CM also stands for community member. So Crete-Monce community members, thank you all, everybody that contributes to our schools, because together, that's how we get it done, working together and moving forward with a common goal. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Harden.
Why is this mic so loud?
All right, next we have administrative updates. Now, Mrs. Monica Spence, Student Affairs.
Thank you. The following Freedom of Information requests have been received. The first one from Tammy Burnham of Crete, Illinois. All communication between Crete-Monce School District 201U, including Schrager Hauser and Judge James Zagel, from January 1st, 2000 to August 22nd, 2014. The status, a request for extension was given, and then a response was sent on September 2nd, 2014. Our second Freedom of Information request is from Laura Ursel from the IEA-NEA, received on September 4th, 2014. The request is for the names of all non-certified support staff employed in the district, including their job titles, their employment status as full or part-time, and their primary work building and address. The status for this request: a response was sent on September 9th, 2014, containing the above requested information.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Next, we have administrative update for curriculum, and I believe we will be receiving our 2014 AYP academic report from Ms. Laura Hirsch.
Okay, well, since we have such a small group, I'm going to come down here tonight. We have our administrators are here, as they typically do come for this, and I certainly appreciate it. And then they call me the next morning and tell me what a great job I've done. So there's method to my to my madness. For our community members, there was a highlight sheet up by the table there. I hope you got it. And this is good because then I can kind of walk around. And so we're gonna go over the academic report for our scores from last year. And again, the overview of the presentation is first thing we're gonna talk about is the transition from No Child Left Behind to the system that's now in place for 14-15. And then I'll get to our state assessment data. We'll look at our Explore and ACT scores and our advanced placement data from the high school. And then we're gonna look at our NWEA MAP data. And then I'll talk to you about the academic agenda. And finally, I'll provide some informational resources. We're in a place now where out with the old and in with the new. No Child Left Behind, or NCLB, is a thing of the past now. And our adequate yearly progress, which was how we were judged based on our test scores, is gone. And any kind of sanctions that schools were under because they failed to make the AYP targets is also gone. And now we're into our new accountability system, which is focused on Common Core standards, our new PARCC assessment, and student growth. So the new system itself has actually been coming on in phases. So we started back in school year 2010-11 when the state adopted the Common Core standards. And then in 12-13, they added principal evaluation, including student growth. They added the fact that we had to use a research-based teacher evaluation model, which the state endorses Charlotte Danielson's framework, and our district's been using that framework since 2004, so we're ahead of the curve on that one. And then 12-13 was the first time we gave the 5 Essentials survey. And that's a survey where the state surveys students, staff, and parents, students in grades 6 through 12. We'll be doing that survey again this year, sometime between January and March. And then last school year, the new school report cards came out in October, and they'll be coming out again at the end of October. But the new school report cards were a different model. They're much easier to read. They contain some different information, and each year now they're going to be adding some more information about schools. And now this year, we have the PARC assessment, which our students will be taking in grades 3 through 8. And then at the high school, they'll be taking it if they're in Algebra 2 or English 3. That'll be happening in March and in May. And this year, then, the state is putting together a report on the school report card, and what's coming is this multiple, they call it a multiple measures index. And really what it's saying is the days of the one test score and your schools are judged based on one test score, we're going to be looking at a more comprehensive picture. We're going to be looking at not only test scores, but student growth. We're going to be looking at graduation rates. We're going to be looking at all kinds of factors to look at the school in a complete way. So that is this year is the beginning of that. Also, they are implementing this year a system of support for schools identified as priority schools or focus schools. Priority schools are the lowest 5% of schools in the state. We do not have any of those schools in our district. And focus schools are schools that have significant achievement gaps. Again, we have not been notified that we have any schools in our district that fall into either one of those categories. So where's Mr. Brown? Yes, he made me repeat that 3 times last week because it's a great thing. It's really important. And then the last thing that's coming is a new teacher evaluation model that will include student growth as part of teacher evaluation. And that's coming down in 16-17. So with this transition to a new system, we now have an assessment transition. And if you recall, back in 2012-13, the first thing the state did as part of that transition was to raise the cut scores on ISAT. And if you remember this, our scores were about 70, in the 70% area for reading and in the low 80s for math. And then once they raised the passing score on those tests, our test scores dropped, as did everybody's test scores in the state. That year also, they added Common Core standards, Common Core type questions to the ISAT. So the test became a little bit more difficult. And we were still under No Child Left Behind, so we still had sanctions and status. And then the first thing that they did after they had us take that test was they established a baseline growth score. So that growth score was reported on the school report card last year, and we will be getting a new growth score when the report cards come out at the end of October. 2013-14 is the year that I'm going to show you data for, and I want you to keep in mind as you're looking at the data that last year's test scores, the test was 100% aligned to Common Core. So the test became more rigorous. We still had the higher cut scores, so we had a harder test, harder to pass. And then in the spring, the state got the waiver on NCLB, which is going to allow them to implement their new system. And because of that, they decided there are no AYP calculations and no NCLB status or sanctions. So things like corrective action, restructuring, those things are all gone. And now as we move into 14-15, which is our current school year, what you're going to see is the initial time we take the PARC assessment, which will be happening, and that will establish a baseline score for everybody, all districts. We're shifting, as I said, to that multiple measures index, and they've identified schools which we have not been identified. Right, Mr. Brown? Okay. So, because there was no AYP calculations, which is usually what I present to you, the big question was, well, how do we compare our test scores from 2013 to our test scores 2014? So we're going to look at it a couple ways. We're going to look at it first by all tested students. So we're going to look at third graders from 2013 and third graders from 2014, different groups of students, okay? Then we're also going to look at the test scores in what we call student cohorts. And those are groups of students, the same students, who took the test in 13 and that same group of students who took the test in 14. So we're comparing the same students and are their scores improving? So that's what we want to look at. So this is an all slide, and you can see this is reading, and this is a general trend that you're going to see throughout all the slides. Reading, because the test was getting more difficult, we had slight decreases in scores. But again, I want to reiterate, this is all students. So our 13 This third grade group in 13 is different than this third grade group in 14. Okay, different groups of students. But you can see generally across the board, there were little changes in reading. I don't want to call them decreases because they're different groups of students. In math, you can see we had changes going the other direction. And this is throughout our math scores. Our math scores have been going up, which is wonderful. I also am I want you to look at 7th grade as you're looking at the slides, because one of the other trends that we noticed when we were looking at the data is that we tend to see a drop in performance from 6th grade to 7th grade. And we've been asking ourselves, why is that happening? Because for those of you that look at the report, and I know my colleagues here come here every year, and I would always say, look at what the 6th grade is doing. You know, they get them from 5th grade to 6th grade, and they always have growth. Well, part of what we're seeing from 6th grade to 7th grade is in 6th grade, they're getting 90 minutes of math every day and 90 minutes of reading every day. When they go to the middle school has 45-minute periods. So they're getting 45 minutes of math and 45 minutes of reading. So they're getting half the instructional time. So that was something that we've been having conversations about, and I know with Ms. Chrysos, we're gonna look at some scheduling ways that we can kind of adjust that. But again, something to keep your eye on as I'm going through the slides. I also wanted to go and look at the PSAE data from the high school. And again, these are different groups of students because we test 3rd through 8th, and then we do not test again until 11th grade. So 11th grade, different groups of students each year. But what you generally see here are some small changes in math. But remember, we put in a really strong literacy initiative at the high school 2 years ago. And I know our literacy coach is in the audience. But you can see over the last 3 years, we've had steady increases so that we've gone up actually 14% in the last 3 years, which is a huge increase in reading achievement. So now I've got cohort data here. Now this is reading cohort data. So what you're seeing is you're seeing our 3rd to 4th, our 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th. And again, what you're seeing is they took a harder test. We're seeing slight decreases from one year to the next with that group of students. Reading is much more complex than math, but when we get to math, you'll see what happens. So those same students who took the test in 3rd grade and then took it again in 4th grade and 4th to 5th, we had some double-digit gains in math achievement. And I think that's because we've been implementing a Common Core math curriculum for the last 3 years, and the changes in the content of math that was shifted to different grades is now that curriculum is starting to work its way through our grade levels. And again, math is very linear. You know, we're talking about skills, math computation, math understanding. Reading is much more complex. So we've had huge increases in math achievement, and you're going to see that throughout the slides. And I'm just going to go through. You can see Balmoral, they had double-digit gain from 3rd to 4th, and again they had significant gain from 4th to 5th, and they even had a little bit of reading gain. But as I go through, you'll see this in all the buildings. Crete, again, had good gains in math achievement. Talala, 32.3% from 3rd to 4th grade in math. We have yet to have a gain like that. That's just incredible. Monee, again, up for both of those groups in math. CSK had double-digit gains in math, and they actually had some growth in reading too. So they had good growth all around. The 6th grade center, 17.5% change in reading or in math for those students. And then again, remember the middle school factor that we're decreasing our instructional time here. And you can kind of see it in the slide as I look at it, because we get a drop from 6th to 7th in reading and math, but then by 7th to 8th, it kind of levels off because students have been in the school for a year, and I think they're used to the length of those class periods. Okay, Explore. We have a system in Crete-Monce for our ACT-EPAS, which is, EPAS is a series of 3 tests. Students take Explore, then Plan, then ACT. Those are connected to each other, and they're supposed to be predictors of how students perform when they take the ACT their junior year and how they'll do in college. We actually start this in 7th grade. And Explore typically is a test that students take in 8th grade and in 9th grade, but we start in 7th. So you can see on November 13th, the middle school is giving the Explore test to both 7th and 8th graders. And the reason we do that is because we want to get a baseline on our 7th graders so we can help them do a better job when they get to 8th grade and take the test, because that test helps place them into high school courses. And you can see here over the last 4 years, our 7th to 8th grade Explore growth, we're targeting 2 points of growth a year, and that's pretty much what EPAS says you should have for a year. And you can see on this that our composite, which is over on the right, for the last 3 years has consistently been above that 2-point target that we've set. And actually the first year that we did it, we were pretty darn close to the 2 points. Again, I want to point out math. Math has been steadily marching up, as has science. And this year right here, I believe we had a grammar initiative that year, so we got some strong growth there. But even the scores that are below the 2-point line are still very much within reach of 2 points. So the middle school has been moving those students from 7th to 8th grade Explore. And then when we look at the 8th grade Explore over the last 5 or 6 years, the thing I want to point out is that the national average for an 8th grade Explore when we give it is 14.9. We have been kind of flat, but we're still above the national average for every year going back to, I think it's 9-10 is that red line. Science is well above the 14.9. Math is above the 14.9, and English was above. They're right there, and reading is close. We're close. Our goal has always been to get to 16 as a composite, and we're continuing to work on that. So after students take the Explore in 8th grade and they move on to the high school has a system as well. Students come in and they take the Explore in fall testing. So tomorrow's fall testing. So tomorrow, our 9th graders will be taking an Explore, our 10th graders will be taking a Plan, and our 11th graders will be taking a practice ACT. And then what we do in between fall and spring testing is we do a series of benchmark practice tests in all those areas, so they can get scores throughout the year and monitor how kids are doing. And then when they come back in the spring, our 9th graders now take the Plan, our 10th graders take a practice ACT, and what we've had up until this year is our 11th graders take the PSAE, which is the ACT plus the work keys part of the test. This is the last year. Last year was the last year we had the PSAE, and this year we will just be giving the ACT on March 3rd. The state is continuing this year to offer it for all of our students, and so we're going to participate in that. One of the other things we do in addition to all this benchmarking is we offer an after-school course called Excel Edge, and the board has been very generous in the past several years because the district helps to subsidize the cost of that program for our juniors. So how are we doing on our ACT? This is 6 years worth of data, and actually Mrs. Sanders was in the office today and I came running down the hall because we got this year's report this afternoon, so I had to go back in and adjust the slide. But some really good news here. You can see that we have our composite is at 18.9. That is the highest composite score we've had in 6 years. Our science is right at the highest. Our reading, remember reading initiative, reading has jumped to 19. That's the highest we've had in 6 years. Math is steadily marching upward. Again, the highest in 6 years. And our English is on the increase, and again, the highest score we've had in 6 years. So kudos to the high school. All that hard work is paying off. Now the next ACT slide, we get a second report. And we get the report because students take the ACT in their junior year in the spring. But if they don't like their score, sometimes they go and take it again, take it in the summer, take it in the fall. And so what ACT does is they send us an additional report for our graduating class. So those students who take another ACT, they recalibrate our district scores and send us the scores. And again, you can see that we've got some, it pretty much follows the trend. We've got some have some high scores here. Again, English, the highest it's been in 6 years. Math is steadily moving upward, the highest in 6 years. Reading initiative, the highest in 6 years. Science is it's a little up and down, but it's on the increase, and our composite just shot way up, and now, again, 18.7, the highest in 6 years. So give yourselves another round of applause, high school. Advanced placement courses. One of the things that we've done, and I know our division leaders are well aware of this, is we put in a plan in place about 3 years ago, I think, to really improve our advanced placement numbers. And this is, you can see that this goes all the way back to 2010. Last year, in 2013, we were recognized as an AP honor roll school. And the way you get that is you increase the number of students who take AP classes and take the test. And you also increase the percentage of students who score a 3 or better on their AP exams. So in 2013, we jumped from 40% of our students who took the test getting a 3 or higher to 55%, which was a 15% increase. And we also increased our numbers of students. For 2014, we increased another 5%, so you can see we're closing in on the state, which is the 66, and we're 1 percentage point away from what they call global. We also, last year, increased the number of students who took AP tests by 30 students. So we were up to 94 students, which means that in this time frame here, we have doubled the number of kids that are taking AP tests. So good news there. We want kids taking AP classes. So again, high school, give yourselves a round of applause. The last data slides I'm going to show you is our NWEA MAP scores. And this is I'm going to call this baseline data because this is the first year that we've had grades 3 to 8 all taking the same test. And people go around, they talk about their MAP scores or NWEA, and it's important to understand what it stands for. It's from the Northwest Evaluation Association, and the test is called Measures of Academic Progress. That's where we get NWEA MAP from. It's a different kind of test. It's a computer test, but it's adaptive. So every student that gets on answers a series, probably like 3 to 4 questions, and the computer determines whether the questions need to get harder or need to get easier. So it becomes an individualized assessment. So that's what an adaptive test is. And it measures student growth over time. So each student gets a growth target, so to speak. And it measures it using what they call a RIT score, which is an equal interval measure. So think of a yardstick. Or think of, when your kids were little and you put them up against the wall and you draw their height on the wall. It's kind of that inch by inch type of thing. And it's called a RIT score. And what we did last year was we tested our students in the fall, we tested them in the winter, and we tested them again in the spring. And when they generate a fall score, the score is placed on what NWEA provides, and they call it a learning continuum. So it will say, here are the students in this score range, and those students are ready to learn X, Y, and Z. The benefit to teachers with that is that now I know what to do with my students. It's an instructional planning tool. So it gives us something that none of our other tests give us. It doesn't give us any information. Those tests don't give us any information on where do we go next with our students. This test does. And it allows us to set growth targets for students, and it allows students to goal set themselves. So they sit down, they look at their scores, they figure out what they need to do. They say, you know, the next time I take this test, I want to have growth of 3 or 4 more RIT points. So it allows for student goal setting. This is the district data. And the way I put it together was I looked at two different measures. One is we had a projected growth that we got in the fall. Did we meet that growth target with our actual growth in the spring? So from point A to point B, did we get the growth that they said we should get? So that's the first thing, and that is this column here for reading and this column here for math, and you can see that where it's highlighted in the darker blue, that's where we met or exceeded the growth score. So we met our target. Then the other thing that we looked at is, okay, that's an average. So let's look at all of our students individually and figure out what percentage of our students actually met their own personal growth target. And what the national average is for that is 50%. So any percent here that you see for reading or for math that's at 50% or above, that means we met or exceeded the national average for the percent of students meeting their growth target. So as I go through the next slides, which are the building slides, look for the blue and look for the yellow. You know how I strategically did that. Okay, so you're going to see blue and yellow on everybody's slides. Balmoral, except for 3rd grade reading, they met their actual growth target and they were over the national average in meeting that percentage. Crete had some 3rd grade math hit their growth target, and we had 3 areas where they met their percent of students at over the 50% mark. Talala had several areas where they met their growth target and also met the percent met the 50% or higher. Monee had 2 areas where they met that. And keep in mind, this is the first time we've done this, so we're gonna continue to work so that we have much more blue and yellow going on these slides. CSK had a lot of places where they met their actual growth and where their student percent was above 50%. 6th grade center, 1 grade, reading, math, and they met it in both areas. In the middle school, and again, keep in mind, we have our drop in instructional time. So we have 1 7th grade reading met the projection, the percent projection. But one of the things I know that the middle school looked at was they looked at whether that gap between the projection here and what they got, is it closing? And in some instances, they are closing the gap. So we're making headway with that. So end of data, and we want to talk a little bit about school improvement. This hasn't changed too much from last year, but we always want to make sure that everything's aligned. So is the district aligned with the schools, and are the work of the schools aligned with what individuals are doing? So we've set student growth goals for this year based on our MAP assessment and our Explore Plan and ACT tests. We've aligned those goals, or we're going to be aligning those goals with our principal evaluation. The activities in all of the school improvement plans are aligned with Rising Star, which is the state school improvement model that every districts across the state are using. And those indicators are indicators of best practice, so we want to make sure that we're, doing what we're supposed to be doing. The school improvement plans are aligned with our academic agenda. And then what we've been doing the last couple of years is the schools write the plans in the late summer, and then they come back in June and we call it a retreat. The school improvement teams come and they report out on their results of their plan. So they report out on their activities, they report out on their data. And we'll do that again this year. So what we've done is the district has given schools 2 indicators. And basically it's that your school leadership team is going to look at your data and make decisions about school improvement, and that your instructional teams are going to do the same thing. They're going to look at data and they're going to make instructional decisions about what's best for their students. And then the schools each pick 2 indicators of their choice. They're all a little bit different. but their plans are all aligned to the academic agenda of the district. And I have to tell you, this doesn't just come out of the clear blue. These are things we've been working on for quite a while. So we have basically 4 areas for the academic agenda. Literacy, which is we're going to continue to focus on reading volume. That's what the high school's been doing. And text complexity. Text complexity just means that our students reading rigorous things in their studies according to what the demands of the Common Core are. And we're focused on that. We're going to be training our teachers in implementing close reading. Close reading, again, is a reading, so it's a reading strategy that's in the Common Core, and it's about rereading passages 2, 3, 4 times and answering questions that are based on what you've read. And then the third thing is using what you've read and writing to what you've read. So using evidence about what you, from the text, and including that in your writing. This year we have a vertically aligned writing curriculum, K through 8. And the other piece to this, we're always doing curriculum work. This year we're going to continue to work on our units of instruction, but the state has now come out with a rubric that we can use to make sure our units are aligned to Common Core and to the new Park assessment. So we can look at our units and make sure that they're rigorous enough so that our kids are getting what they need to be prepared for the new set of tests. In math, we're working on the 6.1 strategy, +1 strategies for student success in grades 6 through 12. That's our math consultant, Bill Hanlon. He's been working with our high school, middle school, and 6th grade center. Part of what Bill does is he provides professional development. We've also set up time this year where our grade levels vertically are being able to talk to each other. So 5th can talk to 6th, 8th can talk to 9th. And again, we work on curriculum all the time. We're going to be working on assessments and making sure our math assessments have a good balance of questions that reflect learning about math concepts, procedural things like rules, and real-life application. And then we're always working on small group instruction, fact fluency, reviewing. We want kids to review, and also those kind of park-type math problems. And then as far as instruction, we've been doing the instructional practices inventory for a couple of years now, and we had training in June, our 2nd level of training, and we're going to continue to work with that. The person that trained us gave us some other ideas now about the next level of implementation, so we'll be doing that. Our administrators are piloting another walkthrough protocol called the 3-minute classroom walkthrough. Grades 6 through 12 are going to focus on response to intervention. We're going to be working with our teacher association on a study for our upper grades. We're integrating technology into classrooms and into our instruction. We have K2 has smartboards for this school year. We're also purchasing some Chromebooks for our elementary classroom, and we're implementing K6 new technology curriculum. So our kids are learning how to keyboard and do all the things that they need to do to be in 21st century classrooms. And then the last one under instruction is really about our teacher evaluation. We have our teacher evaluation committee is meeting next week to start some work. Mr. Neal and I have been working together on getting our teacher evaluation online so that we can start collecting evidence and doing observations using technology. And we also are going to, and now it just went out of my head. I got through this whole part without having something slip out of my head. Where's Lyle? There he is. What was the third thing we're doing? Don't know? All right. Me neither. It'll come back to me when I'm driving home, I'm sure. And then the last thing that we're doing is we always focus on assessment and data analysis and student growth. So this year, our MAP test, we're pushing it down to grades 1 and 2. So we'll be giving that grades 1 through grade 8, and we'll be able to monitor students through the system. Our elementary teacher said this year we need to go back to a one-on-one reading assessment for all kids in grades 3, 4, and 5, so we're doing that. Everyone needs to take the park practice test. So if you haven't done that, I would encourage you to do that. It's always an interesting experience. We're going to be looking at our assessments for student growth. Our kindergarten teachers are piloting a data collection and reporting survey for kindergarten students. This year it's a pilot. Next year it's going live for all kindergarten teachers across the state. So we've got 4 teachers that are part of that pilot. And again, the thing that we always continue to do is work in teams, look at data, plan, and monitor how our students are doing. I provided some websites on the PowerPoint for your information. I've got Common Core for parents. I've got resources on the district website for you. If you go to the State Board of Ed, they have hot topics for this school year, lots of good stuff there. Park online, if you go there, you can find the practice tests. The Illinois School Report Card is at that site, and the new one will be released at the end of October. And then if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that kids survey, you can go to illinoiskids.org and see what that is all about. And at this point, that concludes my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those or try to answer those. Yes?
So with the middle school, you said that data, they have a shortened academic period for math, I believe. So what intervention, what can we do to, I understand we have a shorter time span, but I don't want to see us lose the gains that were obviously achieved in the lower grades.
Mm-hmm.
Because they need to be building progressively. So what can we do in a short amount of time? What kind of initiatives or do we have in place of just simply not expecting for improvement?
So Mrs. Sanders wants to know, how do we maintain the growth that we're getting at 6th grade in the middle school with a shorter amount of instructional time? What can we do? And I know we've been working really hard to look at data there and devise a win period so that students that need extra support are getting that. And part of this joint study is to look at some models that not only address students that need extra support, but then how do we offer enrichment? I know there's models out there where all kids are doing something along the RTI. You know, it's not just for students who are struggling. So we're going to be looking at some
Laura,
ways to schedule.
Would you please explain win period? Because we have a habit of
Yes.
using...
WIN period is, it's an acronym. It stands for what I need. And so if we have students that need some extra reading, that's what we do. If they need extra math support, that's what we do, and it's called the WIN period. Mm-hmm.
Thank you again, Laura, for doing this presentation for the second time. Those of you who don't know, the board has an education committee, and Laura presented that to that committee a couple of weeks ago. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things, mainly Common Core standards. I was approached by a parent who said she did not support Common Core, and she wanted the school board to not support Common Core. And I think it's important that people understand who implemented Common Core standards. It is a state mandate. It is what the state of Illinois has decided to support. And therefore, as a school district, we do not have an option. It is mandatory. And it is something that, like in education, mandates come down from the state. We basically don't have a choice on whether we want to do them or not. The best thing that we can do is to understand the standards as much as possible, prepare our teachers as much as possible, and prepare our students as much as possible. I will encourage parents to go to the Park website and take the practice test. I sat in a Common Core standards workshop just to get more understanding of the standards and to really understand what our teachers were up against and what our students were up against. And I had an opportunity to hear some of the questions on the test. It is not like any other test that our students are used to. I commend the state for upping the ante, so to speak, and making the test more rigorous. However, we have seen that the state sometimes, and this is my opinion, jumps before they think. And so there's been some pullback in some ways on the Common Core standards. But I do support making learning more challenging for our students, and I do believe that our teachers are doing the best that they can to teach these standards to our children. I also want to mention that not only is the state requiring this in our schools, they have actually added some of the Common Core standards to the TAP test, which is the certification test, the basic skills test that our teachers have to take when you get your education degree. You have to take a basic skills test in order to get your certification. They have added this to this test, and they've also upped the cut scores on this test, and as a result, a lot of people in college are not passing that test. So I just wanted to, put that out there to our parents to really understand a little bit more about the standards. I like to hear that our teachers are collaborating and talking and working together to decide how these standards are going to be taught to our students. I know that we do PLCs, professional learning communities, and so our teachers do get a chance to communicate about these things and help one another best way possible. Also, I'm glad that we are doing a lot more in technology. The state is pushing for technology. Part of the PARC assessment is technology-based, and it's something that's global. It's being pushed in education. It's been pushed in every career, pretty much, that we embrace new technology, and I know that as a district we are looking at ways of doing that. Let's see. I wanted to ask you, Laura, just to clarify, and maybe for some who are not familiar with the SIP, the School Improvement Plan, and how that collaboration takes place, and how is that actually developed for each school? Because I think I've gotten questions from parents of what is the SIP, what is it exactly, and also the parental involvement component of SIP.
Well, one of the things, and before I answer your question, I do want to say, when you look at this list, and this is not a comprehensive list, because even the kids assessment, the kids survey is not in here, but there are a lot of things that are coming from the state, and we have no choices but to move forward with these things. But what I will say is that our teaching staff they are working hard. They're doing quality work. They understand the demands that have been placed on them, as well as our administrators, and we do work well together. We know, we're even ahead of, we have new science standards that are coming, and I know our science teachers are already working on the next generation science standards, which involves a total revamp of our curriculum, which will be followed by a new assessment that will, again, be a computer-based assessment, and it'll be much more simulation. So, we know what's coming. We're working hard to make sure that we're prepared for it, but as you can see, there are a lot of things that the state is giving us, and nationally they're giving us, and our job is to be informed and be responsive to that until somebody tells us otherwise. But as far as the school improvement plan, our school improvement plans are they're developed by school improvement teams. So each school has a leadership team that sits down, and they look at data, they make decisions, they develop activities, they set goals, they develop the plans. Their plans, as I said before, are aligned with what we're doing at a district level, but it also allows the school to kind of put their own mark on it. So if we say we're going to, collaborate in teams and look at data, the school decides what that structure looks like, as long as, we're all working toward a PLC type of model. So the plans themselves are developed by the school, and, we have all of our administrators here, and I'm sure they could speak to, what their individual process is. But like I said, they meet throughout the school year, and then what they do when they have the plans are up, and now as parents go into the schools, they'll be asked to review the plans and provide feedback. So we do want parents to look at the plans and let our schools know what they think about them. Okay. No.
Okay. I heard a lot about the scores, and again, commend you and your team for the improvement in the ACTs. Being a college parent myself, recognizing that ACT score, your GPA, all of that equals dollars. So my question, though, is certainly students need grades. So though we see improvements in the scores, how does that relate to student scores? Particularly, I'm going to say I saw you showed gains in math, though, and I'm speaking specifically at this level.
Okay.
And probably even the middle school level as they transition in. So what are our gains, and are the grades emulating the same success as the ratios as these as the scores indicate on the ACT and the other scores or assessments that you have?
Grading is a very complex thing, and it in some ways it has to do with student work completion, which in turn does have something to do with learning, which does impact test scores. So, in some ways they're connected, but at times they can also be disconnected. We certainly hope grades reflect learning and test scores reflect learning. And because we want our curriculum and our assignments and our tests that we're doing in class to align to the high stakes test, we want the grades and the test scores to kind of come together, I guess is what I'm saying. But in some ways there can be a disconnect. I know one of the things that we've been doing with Bill Hanlon here at the high school is his strategies for success. The work that he's doing is to reduce the amount of D's and F's that students are getting in math courses. And when he first started working here, we are seeing a reduction. In fact, the first semester that he was here, we saw a reduction of 14% in the failure rate in Algebra 1. So, the idea is to build success on success, and then once kids are successful, there's more motivation for learning, and they become more engaged in the classes, and then their learning increases, and then so do test scores. But the improvement in grades will happen much faster than the improvement in, say, a standardized test score, because teachers aren't giving standardized tests. They're giving tests aligned to their curriculum. So, for example, if I'm teaching, let's say I'm teaching algebra and I'm teaching about slope, okay? I probably will ask some questions about slope. I may ask students to give me a formula. I may ask students to give me a definition. I may do something along those lines on my math tests that I'm giving at the end of the chapter or the semester exam. They're probably not going to ask that on the ACT. They're probably going to ask an application problem, a word problem, where students are going to have to go back and pull that information that they've learned in class and apply it to a test question on a standardized test. So I'm trying to make it clear that a test in a classroom is not going to be a standardized test. It is preparing students for standardized tests, but again, it's a different thing.
I think she was asking, have we made a comparison of those?
I haven't done an actual comparison, no.
And I mean, I hate to be redundant because I ask it most regularly since 2007, 8, 9. As a parent, you're sitting at home and your kids have A's, B's, and they're flying through the school with these good so-called great grades. But then, obviously, as they take the standardized test, it doesn't indicate, and at the end of the day, the ACT and these scores are what are the indicators. And even you guys, if you leave the middle school, you take, what is it, the plan test, one of those
Explore.
tests. It's the test that indicates how you're placed, even at this school.
It's one indicator.
The test, I mean, it's like, and I get it, I guess, but I'm asking what ways that we can improve probably the communication portion of it, because it's almost as it's a false sense of, or at least to me, a false sense of we're doing good. You can't get out of the class with an F, let's just say in math, or let's just say the D is passing, but it's not, if the D translates, they don't match.
No.
So how is a parent or a student to understand or to relate to this problem, and particularly a parent, because I'll never forget being in, what was it, 3rd grade, having a kid who had all A's, but had like a 1.8 on one of the tests in 3rd grade, what's the standardized test back then? Whatever the test was, I was to be ecstatic that he had all A's in 3rd grade, but this test, oh, don't worry about it, Mr. Sanders, that'll come up. And as the years go on, I'm looking, the test scores are lower, but the grades say whatever. So I just always have wondered, and I still see that it's happening over and over, and I don't know, is it ever going to change?
I remember back, I don't remember exactly what year it was. I want to say it was probably about 2010, 2011. We did pull grades and we did pull ACT scores, and we had a slide that did show, you know, students in this grade range have an average ACT of this, and it did correlate with the higher the GPA, the higher the test score. Haven't done that calculation since then, but you know, if everything's aligned, if the curriculum is aligned with the standards, and you're preparing kids for the standards, and the standards are what are on the test, things should correlate together.
I think maybe you could talk about that by talking about some of the new rigor from Common Core that the president has talked to us a little bit about, and then your other things about AP. How many more kids are taking AP? Why are you bringing them into AP? That it's about the rigor, and that's what I'm hearing is discussion about rigor.
Well, and we know the standards are rigorous. You know, if you looked at the practice tests, the tests are much more rigorous. The curriculum has to become more rigorous, because if we don't keep up with that, our students will not perform well on that test. And you know, when kids go to college, yes, colleges look at test scores, and they look at grades, and they look at extracurriculars. I mean, they look at the whole child. And you know, right now where we're at is we're looking at a test score. That's what this report really becomes about. And we know that there are things beyond just taking a test. And that's why they're going to this multiple measures, because they want to have a better picture of all schools.
I think that, the report here, along with the Good News report, all of the things that we're doing here is we're trying to get information out that lets the community know how well our students are doing. It's very important that they know that. And we're working very hard to get that information out, and the kids, the teachers, and the administrators are working together to make sure we increase the rigor and we continue to improve our scores and our learning. Because it's not just about a test score, it's about our students having the understanding to deal with rigor in life, in the university, wherever they are, we can deal with it. Thanks, Laura.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to resume. Right, moving forward with our action reports. Superintendent Cunningham.
We'd like to approve the application for recognition of schools to forward to the regional superintendent of schools. The application recognition of schools is completed each year by the Board of Education to indicate that the district operates within the guidelines established by the Illinois State Board of Education. The statements cover areas such as existence of school policies, maintaining records, instructional supervision, and certified staff, health records, and curriculum offerings. Each year, the administration reviews these areas with the regional superintendent's office to determine compliance. This yearly review by the district was completed, and we'd just like you to be able to vote on it.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the applications for recognition of schools?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel,
Second.
second by Mr. Brown. Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Heisel,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
and Secretary's aye, Dr. Hall.
Aye. Human Resources Administrator and Teacher Salary Compensation Report. Mr. Neal.
Every year, we are required by state law to report out to the public on administrator and teacher salaries, so it's exactly what it sounds like. And this is, once approved, posted on the website under the Human Resources Department, and anyone can access that information if they so choose. So at this point, just in order to meet the state requirement, we recommend the approval of the requirement for reporting administrator and teacher salaries for the 2014 school year.
Can I have a motion to approve administrator and teacher salary compensation report?
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Heisel, second by Mrs. Sanders. Secretary, please call the roll.
Just a question, please.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I noticed we actually have, just clarity, I guess, 2013, 2014.
The report
That's
runs
typical.
1 year behind. It is
Yeah.
for fiscal year 14.
Okay. 1 year behind?
Yes.
Okay.
It represents the last completed year.
So the one currently posted is for 2012-13. Once this is approved, we'll change it to the 13-14.
Got it. Thank you.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Heisel,
Aye.
Secretary's aye, Dr. Hall.
Aye. Okay, do we have any old business? New business? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Brown, second by Mr. Heisel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. We are adjourned at 7:55 p.m.
I think Tom moved in that second. He was going.
Who moved it? I'm serious.
Oh, I don't know if you want to do that until we, yeah.